This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream. Get access to my streaming video service Nebula when you sign up for CuriosityStream using the link in the description. Okay, we are back once again with the Formula 1 Predictions Challenge, already looking ahead to 2022. With 2022 bringing some heavily marketed changes, new cars, new tyres and a new world champion, we thought it would be best to get out ahead of testing, ahead of the launches, and make our calls with as little information as possible. If you don't know how this works at home, I bring on contestants and ask them a whole bunch of questions about the F1 season ahead, and they have to use their extreme intellect and endless knowledge to get as many questions correct before the cars have even turned a wheel. And then we'll come back at the end of the year, see who we need to suspect of witchcraft. But mostly it's just an excuse to discuss the year ahead as we see it. Our contestants this year are Dan from Racing Reviews. Dan, this is the earliest we've ever done predictions since I think 2019. And this time we've got entirely new cars with only rumour as to how well prepared the teams are. So how have you approached this?
I am fully aware this is going to be chaos. This is going to be the most bizarre year, not just for predictions, but just Formula 1 in general. I am so excited to do these this year. But you're not wrong. I had a stinker the last 2 years, but I'm kind of hoping I'll be a little bit like Haas last year. A year off, and then back to the front this year. Fingers crossed I can get another win.
Also returning is Sean from the F1 Word. There have been times in the past, every year, in fact, when misreading the questions has held you back. Now, you probably didn't notice, but I left Darren Brown-like subtle suggestions throughout the form to focus your mind on reading the questions. So hopefully, this time you feel confident you've at least answered as you intended.
I mean, I appreciate that you played to my inner child and played to the fact I'm clearly stupid. I read all questions at least 307 times, so it took me a while, but I'm looking forward to this. I think going into 2022, knowing nothing, has kind of made this more exciting because you can just go a little bit crazy. I can't honestly say I'd go as far as Dan and say Haas are going to be, quote, back at the front. But yeah, I've had fun with these ones. I might have gone a little bit crazy with one team, but yeah.
Joining us this year is Hazel Southwell from everywhere, really. You've probably seen her articles all over the place and seen her work, even if you didn't realise it was her. Hazel, you are currently in Diriyah, ready for the Riyadh Formula E. That's right?
Yes, yeah. In fact, I'm underneath a duvet as we speak, without wanting to take this to an after dark level.
And it's 11 p.m. where you are. So thank you for doing this.
Well, I think that reflects, I did my predictions at about 1 a.m. or something when you originally sent them. So I think it's good to get back into the mindset that I was in when I said whatever I've said.
Also, we've got Jonty, Jonty's Corner. Jonty, last year you won by going big. Going big's kind of been your thing. So have you stuck with that this year?
Well, technically I didn't win. The audience won.
Yeah, but the audience are several thousand people. You know, yours was a moral victory.
Yeah, it was nice to... Well, it would be nice if we could actually beat the audience properly for a change. But no, the tactic doesn't change. Go big or go home, and in a few cases, because the questions are a bit odd, just guess completely at random and see what happens.
I'm also coming back to give it a go. I took a year off last year, but, I don't really have any introductory bants with myself. So I'll go straight on to reminding you that the audience are also taking part. I poll them with basically the same questions, and as a conglomerated mega mind, they are going to form the benchmark against which we humans will measure ourselves. They've beaten us twice. Only Sean has won outright.
Hell yeah.
So with that, I'm going to try and keep this fairly pacey because it's quite late and I've put way too many questions down. Let's start looking at your answers. First up, I've got a section of simple starter questions. Let's just blast through these to get some points on the board before we get to the meaty stuff. You'll get 5 points if you get it right, and you don't get any points if you get it wrong. So it's all or nothing. And I start with, who will be the World Drivers' Champion? Dan, you've gone with Lewis Hamilton. Sean's gone with Charles Leclerc. as has Hazel. I've stuck with Verstappen, and so's John T. And the audience, like Dan, has gone Lewis Hamilton. 38% went with Lewis compared to 26% for Verstappen and 15% for Leclerc. Hazel, as you're new to this, I'll pick on Sean first. Leclerc, probably the more outside pick of the three. So how do you see 2022 shaping out, Sean?
I don't know. If I'm being honest. No, I think, like I say, it's a chance to go a little bit more bold than usual. And I thought sort of going Hamilton, Verstappen would be a bit samey. So I thought I'd go with Leclerc. And I've got a good feeling about Ferrari this year. And I don't often get good feelings about Ferrari. They don't seem too loud in the press. They just seem quietly confident. And I tend to find that when Ferrari are quietly confident, they do very well. So, or they're hiding things like dodgy engines, but we'll get into that another day. I think they've got a great shot this year. I think a rules reset is what they needed. It's what they've got. And I think they'll do very, very well. And I think probably will be the usual three at the top: Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari. But I fancy Leclerc this year.
Right, I'm probably just going to pick on one of you each for these starter questions just to keep the momentum going. So we'll go straight on to who will come last in the Drivers' Championship. Dan, you've gone Alex Albon. Sean's going to stick with Mazepin coming last for the second straight year. Hazel, me, and John T have all gone with Guan Yu Zhou. And the audience has firmly picked Mazepin. So for me, I think Zhou makes sense. He's a rookie. Mazepin, also got a lot to prove. So Dan, talk me through Alex Albon.
I don't think this is a popular answer. I'm
was
a
your
little
first
bit
clue?
nervous for this one, but I'm just not confident with Williams. I'm really not. I think, judging all of the pairings on the grid, I think they may have the weakest pairing. Close with Haas, but I'm more confident with Haas, as you're going to see throughout this year's predictions. I've got a good feeling about them. Probably a little bit silly. I've got a good feeling about them, but Williams this year, it was another disappointing season, better than the last 2 years, but they're my pick to just be at the bottom. And I think Alex and Latifi will struggle. I think both of them may even finish the season with no points. And out of the two, I just feel Latifi has had those 2 years under his belt now. I don't think he's a bad driver. I think Alex could easily beat him. But I think just having those 2 years working with the team, Alex in a new surrounding still has that little bit of pressure with the Red Bull back in. I've put him to be bottom. More of a guess than a concrete prediction on that one.
Well, that's me depressed. Thanks, Dan.
All right, let's have a look at the Constructors. Who's going to come first in the Constructors title? Will it be Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, or Ferrari, Red Bull, or Mercedes? So 2 apiece. The audience have gone 50% Mercedes, quite a big backing. I've gone with Ferrari based on their confidence, development rate, and maybe having the best overall driver lineup. But John T, tell us about Red Bull versus the others.
Whenever there's a rule change, we're always on about Newey and what he can do, and his understandings of the aero. And I know he doesn't have quite as much of a dominant role within the team now, but you can't ignore it. You just can't. I know there are more successful designers and other people have been doing very well. I think this might have just been a safe pick, or safe-ish.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's that. I was umming and ahhing about that as well. There's a lot in the balance as well, isn't there? Because Red Bull clearly focused a lot of attention on last year more than Mercedes did.
Yeah, I mean, which could hurt them. All that effort last year could leave them sort of a bit burnt out for this year, but I doubt it.
Now, Hazel, I've been saving you for this next question, not going to lie. Who will come last in the Constructors' Championship? Dan goes Williams, consistent with his Albon answer. Sean goes Haas, fair enough. Hazel, I'll come to you in a minute. I've got Alfa Romeo. I've just got this feeling they'll be jumped by everyone else. John T's with me. The audience obviously don't like Haas. 58% went with them. So Hazel, I want to understand the narrative around this pick, bearing in mind Leclerc is your champion.
Yep.
Ferrari.
Yep. Basically, and to be fair, sort of like Sean kind of alluded to this as well, I think that there's a good chance that Ferrari will have a stonkingly great car and it'll be really quick, win loads of races, and turn out to be completely illegal.
Ooh.
Left field.
If that comes true, that'd be amazing. So sort of McLaren 2007 kind of scenario.
Absolutely, like a proper Spygate search.
Hazel, you've come straight into this with exactly the attitude I like to see from our predictors.
It wouldn't be unheard of, would it?
What, for Ferrari to cheat? I mean, sorry, for Ferrari to completely follow the rules, but just for reasons they had to adjust stuff mid-season?
But the question is, if they did that, would we be told about it?
I mean, we'll try not to talk about FIA transparency. It might be a bit...
Going to whack on to the next question. I just want you to tell me the highest placed team beginning with A. So we got 4 Alpines, 1 AlphaTauri and an Aston Martin among you, which actually almost perfectly melds with the audience distribution. Alpine's the popular pick. Jonty, quick word?
They did great last year.
Fine, perfect.
Why change it? And also, brand new rules. Again, brand new rules with Alonso in the car. That's going to be worth a lot.
All right, let's have a quick look at which driver will get the most Driver of the Day awards. Bit of a popularity contest, but also you want to be leaning on people who might do some notable drives during the year. Almost a full spread of answers here. Schumacher, Verstappen, Hamilton, Sainz, and Russell. The audience also went Verstappen. Dan, I was going to say you're the outlier here in terms of people you might obviously pick, but I guess this is going into your Haas Renaissance narrative.
Oh, God, yeah. The Haas fanboy is very much back this year. That will be a theme. But I also think Mick did a good job last year. I think we saw in Hungary, in particular in racing conditions, and Turkey definitely in qualifying conditions, he can do a solid job. And I think if that car is as good as I think it's going to be, Sean, I don't think it's going to be a race winner. Don't worry, I'm not that extreme. But I think they could be fighting for points. Plus the Schumacher name, I think that could be a popular vote, even if he's 10th place, but really putting in some good fights in that midfield. And he's going to be driving against potential world champions if their car isn't having a particularly good race, former world champions. I just think he could be a really popular choice this year.
All right, and let's finish off the starter questions with the official F1 Overtake Award, which I don't believe has a sponsor at all. Vettel won last year, but it was quite close between him, Alonso and Raikkonen. So let's see what you think is going to happen this year. We'll come back to Sean. Another nice mix here. Vettel and Alonso, the obvious candidates. Stroll could do some good work if that Aston's up to much. I think the key to winning the overtaking award is to start in a lowish position on the grid where you have the ability to make up positions.
What have I done?
So Sean, George Russell. You think he's going to have some bad qualifying? He isn't known for his qualifying, let's be honest.
Yeah, yes, that is exactly what I think.
Did you misread the question?
No, what I was thinking was Sergio Perez. I was thinking Alex Albon, people like that who have got in a second car alongside a great teammate.
But just to be clear, you did write George Russell.
I did write George Russell. I'm getting there, I promise. I was thinking along those lines that he's going to get in that car. Team may be geared towards Lewis Hamilton, assuming, of course, he stays. It might take him a little bit of time to get up to speed, so we might see some qualifyings where he ends up in those 6th, 7th places, maybe ends up with some extra engine penalties when he does have bad qualifying, and then he's got to come back through. And assuming the Mercedes is still pacey, which you'd think it will be, he'd be able to make those places back. So that's my thinking. Although the laughter has made me far less confident than I was when I wrote it.
You might be laughing at the end of the year. And to be honest, so far you haven't really hoisted the flag for Mercedes, so you could be thinking they might have spunked it all on last year's car and have a really rubbish 22.
Well, to be fair, I need to be a Mercedes hater this year, having apparently been a Mercedes fanboy all last year. So, I should have picked them for last in the Constructors. That'd have been a laugh.
Oh, stranger things have happened. All right, let's move on from the simple starters and go on to something a little bit meaty, a very subjective question. Which team is going to have the best looking launch car? I think we're all quite excited to see what the cars look like this year, seeing as they got a whole new, well, sort of a whole new shape, and the opportunity to jazz up their liveries. Basically, after they've all launched, I'm going to poll the audience, and they're going to give them a score out of odds 50, and whatever score they give your car is how many points you'll get. So let's have a look at what you picked. Dan's gone McLaren, Sean with Alpine, Hazel's gone with Williams, I've gone with Aston Martin, Jonty and the audience have also gone with McLaren. I'll start with me. I think everyone was a bit disappointed with Aston Martin last year, but now they've got rid of the pink and they might be enticed to put some of that lurid green on, which looks so nice on their GT cars. So I think if they do that, I think people might be a little bit excited by that. I'm going to use Sean because I think the rumours are BWT are going to Alpine, so they might have to put the pink among the blue, which actually might look quite nice. What are you thinking?
I feel like I answered this before the pink was confirmed.
I think you did, but
yeah.
It's not confirmed, is it? Is it?
Well, the BWT sponsorship is almost, isn't it? It sort of is. But I think, they might go completely pink and people love a pink car, so that's one reason, I suppose. But I'm just thinking back to last year's livery. I think that was one of the best looking on the grid. And if they replicate that again this year, even with a bit of pink, I think it'll still look fantastic. So that's why I go for Alpine. It's the only reason. I just really like last year's livery, which doesn't really help me for this year, I'm sure. But
although you got to worry because the audience are a little bit fickle if people don't change things year on year.
That's true. Almost the same as last year.
Yeah. A little flash of pink though. I think you could be on something. Hazel, yours is interesting because I think generally as a rule, year on year, Williams are a complete gamble on what their car's going to look like, unless they have a big title sponsor like Martini. So who even knows what they're going to do with their car?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this one was a bit of whimsy because I am a lifelong painful Williams fan. So I actually thought their car looked really good this year, like the sort of tropical fish camel livery. So yeah, I feel like they've been on this big recovery arc and stuff. So it'll probably just be sponsored by Dogecoin or something. God
Rich
knows.
energy.
Yeah. But I feel like there's an opportunity for it to look all right. I mean, also, if it's a launch look, then it's Red Bull tend to come out with something that looks really cool, and then they'll reveal their actual car, and you're like, oh, it's the same car.
You see, I was tempted to go with Red Bull because the question specifically says launch look. If they come out with some fancy camo ball, then it's going to be a fair shout. I was also tempted by Alpine because that livery was amazing last year, and that on the new cars,
I was very tempted to go with the McLaren thing as well, based on the Gulf probability. Were you thinking along those lines, Dan, or were you just McLaren looks good, always looks good?
Pretty much. I mean, it's McLaren. Everyone loves McLaren, and I feel they're overdue a change. I am one of these people that will get upset if it stays the same. I don't care if you all get upset about that. It bugs me. I think they pay enough to the marketers to change a livery, and McLaren will do it. If it's Golf, perfect. I think that's an easy slam dunk. But I think if they stick with the papaya, I don't really think they can go wrong.
All right, I'm going to move on to what may be the most complicated question that I definitely made too confusing. Top N after N. In previous years, I've asked you for your top 6 after 6, just the top 6 of the driver standings after 6 races. I don't know. I just wanted to mix it up a bit. So I want the first place driver after the first race, the second place driver in the standings after the second race, and so on down to the 8th in the standings after the 8th race. Maybe constructing some kind of narrative to how maybe some teams will start off well and then start to fade. That's what I did. This is going to be very hard to talk through, but let's give it our best shot. Starting with you, Dan. Okay, so Dan, you think Russell's going to win the first race and then drop down to second by race 2. Max will still be third after 3 races, Sainz around the midfield, and then some of the McLarens. I'm assuming you've hidden Lewis Hamilton in there somewhere, maybe winning race 2 and taking the lead?
Possibly. I couldn't tell you what I've done with this one, Stuart. I have no idea. This was the most bizarre question to work out. So, yeah, Hamilton's in there somewhere, I'm sure. Might be Guan Yu Zhou by that point leading the standings. I really don't know.
It's a real mind messer, this one. But sure, let's pretend you've hidden Hamilton in there somewhere. Sean, you've gone Leclerc fast out of the gate. Verstappen doing quite well, but dropping to third by the third race, and then you got Alonso in there fighting for fifth, and Vettel poking his face in. Notably, no visible Mercedes at all in yours, keeping to your theme of Mercedes being crap this year.
Well, much like Dan, I have no idea what's going on. Yeah, I mean, I'm just assuming. I can't remember thinking what's behind it. Leclerc will win the first one. I think Ferrari will come out of the gates, whatever it is, strong. Yeah, maybe Hamilton's P2 by race 3, that sort of thing. He's in there somewhere. George will be in there as well. But yeah, I'm going to be honest. It was all pretty much guesswork apart from Leclerc in number 1.
Right, Hazel. Also got Leclerc fast out of the gate. Hamilton is second by the second. You've got this Norris dropping down the order narrative going on after the first few races, which is interesting. And a little Bottas peeking in there as high as 7th by the 7th race.
Yeah, so obviously I had Leclerc for drivers' champion. And especially because we're going down the order as we progress through the races. So like anyone who's at the top by the round 4 prediction, you're not really talking about. Sorry, Lando. But yes, so my theory was that it would be a Leclerc-Hamilton title fight. That Norris would be doing very well, but would probably have like a crappy race 4, like get crashed out or something. And then end up sort of having a bit of a messy bit and probably go back up the order. Bottas we can expect to do well. There's a chance the Alfa Romeo has a significant recovery. They do still have a big engineering partnership with Ferrari to some extent.
I'll tell you my story as I remember it. We got the Mercedes starting off well, but then starting to slip back as Red Bull get it together. So you can't see any Red Bulls, but they're sort of moving their way up as Mercedes move down. And then 4 to 8, you just chuck some people in who you think are going to be there or thereabouts. That's the gamble. I've kind of got this idea that Red Bull will actually do pretty well development-wise this year, and so will come on strong, especially with their strong aero people. That's basically what I think. If you look at Jonty's, he might have been thinking in a similar direction to me, as much as you can.
Yeah, pretty much. Thinking Mercedes will come out the gate quick, but then Red Bull will just overhaul them as it goes on. I mean, even as far as potentially still a little bit of sandbagging around the first race, just to hide the real pace that they've got. McLaren probably going to be doing decent, 3rd, 4th scrap. And then I picked the Alpines because apparently last year I was a big fan of them without realising, so I'll keep it going, why not?
I'll just quickly show you the audience, which is quite fun because conglomerating all their answers, they can't have a single focused idea about what they're thinking. But like Hazel, they have a Norris dropping back through the field as time goes on with a cheeky little Ricardo at the end there.
Ricardo.
Not really much. Ricardo, can't really say much else. Bit of a shit show. We'll see how well this all came together at the end of the year. Alrighty, fun one next. This is one bold prediction. A very open question. It works slightly different for you humans than it did for the audience. So all I asked you to make a prediction. Just any prediction, as long as I could measure it. And then I took your prediction and I polled the audience to ask how likely these predictions are to actually come true. And then the less likely your predictions were deemed, the more points you'd get if they came true, up to a maximum of 50. If you got 50 points, then the audience deemed them essentially impossible. But yeah, you only get the points if these come true. So let's have a look at what you came up with. Dan, you said there would be a different world champion if points from sprint races were not included.
Ooh.
This is one of several questions where we've got to hope that sprint races exist. But yeah, this is a pretty cool prediction, especially as we don't even know what sprint races will be like or what their points will be.
Yeah, I wanted my regular moan about sprint races, to be honest. That was one of my big thoughts going into this. I still don't like them. And we came close to that being the case last season. And I think if this year is even closer, I'm not too sure it can be as close, but with a few cars in the mix at least, come Abu Dhabi at the end of the year, with a potential of 8, but also a potential of 0 sprint races, I've got no idea.
Okay, we'll look at the scores in a minute. I'll go straight on to Sean's prediction, who says Ferrari will win 14 or more races in 2022.
I mean, I said I went all in on one team, didn't I? Absolutely.
Really did.
I'm a lot of people are excited for 22, I think, and rightly so. But there seems to be a lot of people seem to think it's going to be this really close championship. Anybody could win it. I'm kind of erring on the side that we're going to see Mercedes 2014 style domination with that prediction. It's maybe not likely, but hey, got to go for it this year.
Hazel has predicted, and I quote, Alex Albon, much though I love him, is outscored by Nicholas Latifi.
Yeah. I don't really have a justification for this. It just feels like the kind of thing that happens.
What do you make of Alex Albon being dragged back to Formula One?
Well, I mean, he couldn't come to Formula E, so he burned that bridge a few years ago. I do think he didn't really get a fair go. It'll be interesting to see what he can make of the Williams, especially because he does seem to be a good development driver, and kind of the coaching work he's done with Yuki and all of the simulator stuff that he was doing with Red Bull last year, etc. Like, for a team that's looking still to recover, with all that time spent in simulators and facilities that maybe Williams can't afford, but they can at least kind of like take some learnings from the driver experience of and from knowing that kind of feedback and stuff. So, yeah.
Me!
You!
Me! I reckon there'll be at least 3 first-time winners this year. This is a little bit... I'm feeling less confident about this as time goes on, but I think, unlike Sean, I think there's a little bit of a chance for everyone this year as sort of the development race shakes out. I think Russell, Norris and Sainz are all possibilities for this.
Alonso doesn't count.
Jonty, let's have a look at yours now. This is classic Jonty. This is classic Jonty wanting the best season he can get. There's going to be fewer than 15 points between the top 3 drivers as we go into the summer break.
Nice.
Yeah. Shot in the dark, but it's one of them that I'll throw out in the hope that it happens.
I mean, as usual, I really hope that your prediction comes true.
Yeah, we've had a couple of predictions from the last few years that I've just gone crazy with, and all the audience are like, if that happens, I don't care who wins. It'll be great. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. All
right. Well, let's have a look at what points the audience gave you. So basically, I'm going to tell you how many points your predictions are going to be worth if they come true. Dan's, yours is worth 36 points out of 50. So pretty good. Quite unlikely, but not like impossible. Sean, they gave you 41 points. So they don't think it'll happen, but if it does, at least, well, in your eyes, it'll make up for a dominant season. Hazel, you got 32. I think the people still believe more in Albon than not. I only got 23 points, which is about 50-50. Jonty's, yours is worth 29. So a little bit better than even.
You know what? They're all a big haul if you land that one, and none of the rest of us does.
Yeah, it's definitely good to get one. Now, to allow the audience to sort of pick, I asked you guys to make a second prediction so that there would be 10 predictions in all, and I'd put them all into a pot, and the audience gets to pick one of them, not knowing what the scores are. So I'll just quickly go through what your second choices were. Dan, you put in Hamilton does not win a race, which would be worth 45 points. That's the highest one. Sean, you popped in Mazepin will score at least 15 points, which would be worth 42 points because the audience hate Mazepin that much. And actually, I think it's not that unlikely at all. Hazel, you chucked in Schumacher making Q3 at least 4 times.
Clearly, my confidence in the Haas is significantly below Sean's.
I said Vettel will retire this season for 29 points. And Jonty, at least 4 wheel cover problems or malfunctions in the pit stops. The most likely in their eyes.
Yeah. Well, come on, last time we had wheel covers, it was 2 or 3 every bloody race.
I reckon that's 20 points in the bag, you know. I reckon you could give him them now.
Assuming,
he doesn't get them.
Assuming the audience have picked it.
Oh, the audience. Oh, yeah. Good.
Only the audience can get... Well, anyway, the audience didn't pick any of your secondary ones. They picked my primary one, at least three first-time winners. So we're both going to be looking for that. But we will see if any of these 10 come true at the end of the year to see if they could have picked... Well, I think they should have gone for the Mazepin one, not going to lie. They just don't like him.
Just kind of, I've given him those 15 points, but that's opposite to what I said about who finishes bottom of the Drivers' Championship. Or if he finishes bottom with 15 points, we've had a cracking season.
There's no consistency in this game. Let us move on to a classic, the podium finishes. As always, I'm going to ask you to tell me every single driver that will appear on the podium. You get 5 points for every one you get right. You'll lose 3 points if you miss one, or if you give me one that doesn't get on the podium. Dan, you've tended to go conservative with this question in the past. Let's see what you did this time.
Christ.
Okay, so you got the 2 Mercs, 2 Ferraris, 2 McLarens, 2 Alpines, and then you got a Gasly, a Vettel, Guan Yu Zhou, Mick Schumacher, and...
In that Stroll, not a Vettel.
That is a Stroll, sorry. I was looking at a tiny screen.
Yeah.
And Mika Hakkinen represents a substitute driver, because I gave you the option of saying a substitute driver could come in and get a podium. So, as we know, he's on sabbatical, so he'll be the first to be pulled up. Yeah, so actually, I wouldn't say this is particularly conservative, especially with the Guan Yu Zhou thrown in there.
Did I not put either Red Bull driver?
Yes, I was going to say this.
Oh no.
They are a notable absence, so very bold. I did double check. I double checked and I triple checked.
Right, well that was an honest mistake.
You should read the question properly, Dan.
Yeah, I should. I'll take that one. I can't believe I've gone Guan Yu Zhou and Schumacher over Max Verstappen. Hey, it is what it is.
It'll be a hell of a season.
I'm lost for words after that one. I do think Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, Alpine, confident with those. Stroll, I'm surprised he didn't get one last season. So I thought, you know what, he's normally a driver that gets a little bit of luck on his side, so I can feel he's getting a podium. My Mick Hakkinen, of course, is Grosjean when he comes in at the end of the season or replaces Hamilton at the start of the season. So he had to be in there. But no, Max Verstappen. Comment's going to love me today.
Okay, this is clearly a political statement on the events of last year.
Don't you dare.
Direct all your comments to Dan. Right, Sean, you have included the Red Bulls and everyone down to Alpine as well as Gasly and Vettel. This is Vettel. And that's it, which I think's, no real gambles here.
Yeah, I don't tend to go too mad with the podium one. I mean, Red Bull are going to be in there, Dan. Mercedes are going to be in there. I think Ferrari already put them down as champions, so McLaren will pick up something. And I've really got a good feeling about Alpine. They are my dark horses this year, so I'm happy with that. Seb is more out of hope than expectation, maybe, and Pierre Gasly just gets better and better, so I can see him up there. And I'm going to take Hazel's argument for AlphaTauri getting some parts from Red Bull, some tech from Red Bull, because that was a great point. So I'm going to steal that one as well and pretend that I had that thought myself, and that's why Pierre's there.
Brilliant. You said that out loud, but sure.
Well, edit it then.
Sure. Right, Hazel, we're going to continue to build your very interesting narrative in which Leclerc wins the World Championship without getting a single podium.
So I think at this point I've decided that he was disqualified. So he briefly won the World Drivers' Championship, and then it was his car was the problem. It was like full of ghosts or something. Yeah, I mean, the absence of Gasly is definitely interesting. Maybe I was having like some strange anti-francophone driver moment. I don't know. Oh, and of course, because Charles is disqualified mid-season. After winning 2020 races, they get Antonio Giovinazzi to do the final three, so he gets a podium.
Perfect, love it. I'll quickly run through mine. my reasoning, I just kept looking at drivers and just thinking, well, yeah, of course they'll get a podium. Why wouldn't he not get a podium? And then suddenly I had 15 people, which is definitely not going to happen. But here we are. I even had Latifi in there for some reason. And actually, if we look at Jonty's, even he was restrained enough not to pick Latifi, which I think is how you're going to win, Jonty.
Yeah, I won't lie. There was some mathematical thinking behind this, and that definitely won't be a reserve driver, definitely won't be an Alpha or a Haas or a Williams. So out of the others, only 8 need to get a podium to come out on top points-wise.
But Williams got a podium last year.
Yeah. Did they, though? Did they really?
I mean, it would get you 5 points, yeah.
Yeah. It was Spa, which I'm certain is never going to happen again.
Oh, no.
I'll quickly run through the audience. Just the way I got the audience answers, what I asked them how many different drivers would get a podium, and then I just picked, they said 11 people, so I just picked their top 11 drivers, which is very similar to Sean's, except they don't believe in Ocon. So pretty conservative, actually, from the audience, but then again, they are the people to beat. So
no faith in the tallest or shortest drivers on the grid.
Whereas you and me got them both. Okay, let's go into a section called Teammate Wars, in which I'm going to ask you several questions about teammates competing with each other. Starting with telling me the points difference between Sainz and Leclerc. Dan thinks they'll be 16 apart. Sean, 21. Hazel, just 7. Which means Sainz is going to take Leclerc's right to the very end in the title race, I think.
I mean, it depends if you count sort of pre-disqualification or not, I guess.
This is going to get very complicated if all the things that you say happen. I gone for 12. Jonty's gone for a very specific 17.5. And the audience have been attributed the median score of 20. All right, Sean, I'm going to pick on you. You've gone for the biggest gap. So how do you see these two battling it out?
It kind of goes back to what I said when we did the results a few weeks ago. Sainz was incredible to beat Leclerc. But I think when you look at their stats for the season, Leclerc was the better driver, and I think that will pay dividends in 2022. So I think Sainz will do well. Maybe even runner-up in the championship. You never know if I stick with my Ferrari guns. But yeah, I think there's something about Leclerc. I think he's a breed of driver that has the potential to be up there with a Hamilton, a Verstappen. That'll go down well. And I think he's kind of got the potential to be on that level. And I really like Sainz, but I think he's just below that. Controversial opinion maybe, but yeah, I just think he'll have the edge Leclerc, and quite a significant edge, I guess, at 21 points. But yeah, that's kind of my thinking there.
In your imagined world, Sean, Ferrari are going to dominate the championship. So with less than a race victory between them, this thing's going all the way to the end.
I hope so. I mean, at least if we've got a dominant season, we get a Rosberg, Hamilton 2016 kind of thing. That could be fun.
Let's look at the Haas people, Schumacher and Mazepin. Which one of them is going to score points first? If they don't score points, then we just bin this question, don't we? Actually, Sean, it was you that made me think of this question, because last year you were very much had Haas been a little bit better. You were if there was an opportunity, Mazepin's the one who's going to stick his nose in and grab it.
Yeah.
So we have an even split: 3 Mazepins, 3 Schumachers. Audience obviously very behind Schumacher. I've already talked about Sean's kind of thoughts on Mazepin. So Dan, give me the Schumacher defence, seeing as he's your new idol.
Apparently so. I mean, he was the better of the two last season. I don't think I really need to say much more on that. I also think as well, there is going to be 8 cars fighting for points. And of those 16 drivers, do I think Nikita Mazepin is in the top 15? No. So I think him scoring points is going to be tricky. Could it happen? Sure. I think that Haas car is going to be much better this season, but it's still going to be lower end of the points if they're fighting for points, and that's why I think Schumacher, being the more consistent of the two, Saturday and Sunday, maybe is a little bit more frequent crashing at the end of the season, but even still, I think Schumacher, the sensible answer, but I understand it can get messy, so it's 50-50.
Let's now look at Aston Martin. I want you to give me the difference to the average starting positions of Stroll and Vettel. Last year, it was 1.4 in Vettel's favour. This year, everybody thinks it's going to be even higher. Jonty, you've gone quite by far the biggest here. So why do you think this gap's only going to get bigger, despite Vettel, on the way down and Stroll definitely on the way up?
Good. Same old thing. New cars, new rules. The more experienced drivers, in theory, should have much more of an edge.
But it's quite a significant gap. 2 rows on the grid as a kind of average.
Yeah, but I think last year that car was really up and down.
Yeah.
They both did very well or very poorly, but I think this year they'll have that dialed in a bit more, which will allow the better driver to show more.
I went for the second largest gap, like nowhere near as big as Jonty, but my thinking was because it was starting positions, not qualifying in particular, that it only takes a few gearbox penalties, a few really you've got to replace the whole power unit, and you can start warping things quite a lot.
Well, we'll see. Let's have a look at McLaren with most points finishes between Norris and Ricciardo. So this isn't who gets the most points, it's just who finishes in the points more often. This is another even split, 3 Ricciardos, 3 Norrises. Audience very heavily on Norris. I would argue, I know I've put Norris, I think we saw Ricciardo actually find his feet in the second half of last year, so we may see things more even this year perhaps. How do you see them squaring off, Sean?
I think my logic here is, and there is logic, I promise, is I feel like Norris is only going to keep getting better over the next few years, and he was so good last year that, yes, Ricciardo, fully expect him to improve versus where he was sort of the start of last year, and yes, he improved, but improve even more in 22. But I think Norris is going to improve as well, and I think he's gonna edge that one out. That's kind of my thinking behind it. I might be completely wrong. I really want Ricciardo to bounce back big time in 22 because I get really frustrated with people that say he's finished, and I don't think Ricciardo's finished by a long way at all. I think he's got so much still to give and a lot to prove after last year. So he could be pretty special in 22, but I just think Norris is going to keep getting better.
My theory was just that Norris would take home more points at the end of the season, probably again. But he'd just have a fewer. Ricciardo would just have a few more times he came home in 10th or whatever.
I found this one of the hardest ones to kind of judge, but I guess we'll see who ends up the most consistent. Let's have a quick look at Williams. Another sort of frequent one. Who's going to get into Q3 most frequently? Assuming that's a thing Williams can do. I did say if they never get into Q3, we'll switch it to Q2. We've gone for a mostly Albon spread here, including Hazel and Dan, who were previously a little bit down on Alex. So, Dan, maybe you can explain a bit why he's your pick for big quality performances, even if he's going to suck overall.
Well, you're not wrong. I don't think either of them are getting into Q3 at all. But I thought I would try and win back some of the favour from the Albon fans. Is my only thinking on this. Because from F2, when they were teammates, it was Albon who was the better of the two. So I'll give him that. He has scored podiums. He has fought at the front before. So I'll give him the edge on this one. But again, I don't think either of them are getting through to Q3 this season.
Harsh words for the Williams team. Our final teammate war is guessing the difference between the final championship positions of Bottas and Zhou. And Sean, this is a big moment for you because 2 of the humans completely misread this question, and a large chunk of the audience did as well. But Sean, you did not. Because I spotted it, and very generous person, I gave Dan and Hazel the chance to re-answer because they answered 24 and 20 as theirs, which would have been incredible as a season. But I don't think that's what they went for.
2 new teams joining mid-season.
Yeah, I was thinking the same as you, Hazel.
And Bottas or Zhou being champion. Incredible scenes. Okay, so Dan, your final answer was 2. Sean went 3. Hazel also 3. I went a bit higher with 5. and Jonty a bit lower with 2. And the audience median was 5, but you can. Some people did put 24 as well. I could see Zhou coming last because he's a rookie, and I'm not entirely convinced by that alpha team. Jonty, it's kind of a case of how good Bottas is going to be, really, isn't it?
It depends which way you look at it. The
Go on.
positive mindset says it depends on how good Bottas is, or the pragmatic mindset says it's about how bad the alpha is. I think
True, I guess.
you can have Haas and Alpha as 2 terrible cars, with Zhu and Mazepin suffering between them because of it.
So the thing is, I went fairly high on this because I think Bottas is actually pretty good, and I think he'll thrive. I mean, I don't think Mercedes was a toxic environment for him at all. I think they clearly love him. I just think he'll sit well just getting the best out of that 15th compared to 20th, for example, though, is quite a big ask, isn't it? But,
It's a fair
crazy
point.
things have happened.
I completely agree, but will the car let him?
Yes, true. Yeah, if it's a real dog of a car, then they will be 19th and 20th, won't they? All right, teammate war's over. Let's do some questions about sprints, which I really hope are going to happen because otherwise all of this goes in the bin. First question is around. If we took the sprints, just the sprints in isolation, and we gave them all Grand Prix points without fastest laps, who would be champion? Dan, you've gone George Russell. Sean, Carlos Sainz. Hazel's gone Perez. I've gone Hamilton. Jonty's also gone with Russell, and the audience very much gone with Verstappen. Hazel, Perez hasn't really come up at all in this discussion, so what's going to make him king of the sprints?
Well, I'm surprised by my own answer here because I assumed that I would have obviously written Verstappen. So, whoops. No, I think, Perez is not an amazing conventional qualifier, and consistently that's been a thing. He's very good at in races, but he's not kind of in any team. He's very rarely been sort of like the top qualifier ever since the start of his career. But sprint qualifying is a format where he can apply that racing skill, even if he does have a sort of maybe less stellar Friday qualifier. God, I hate this whole format. But yeah,
Whatever the format is.
So I think that was my logic. That in theory the format should suit him. Actually, it really, really hasn't. But let's ignore that. Maybe he'll nail it this year.
Maybe with the new cars, it'll all fall into his lap. George Russell, Dan, he's one of these unknown elements, isn't he? Considering we're going to see him in a top car all year long against Lewis Hamilton, maybe Grosjean. Yeah, what made you go for Russell?
Mr. Saturday.
Yeah.
Mr. Saturday was my main thinking. It kind of goes back to the bizarre, chaotic question earlier. First, second. I feel that Russell showed in Sakhir that whatever car you put him in, he can qualify. And I know he didn't get on pole in that race and it was practically an oval, but I think he still proved that he can jump in this car this year and do a good job, even if it's up against Lewis Hamilton. I think in the races he might struggle, and I think that's where Hamilton's consistently proved he can be consistent. Max Verstappen is a different level, and he has been over the last couple of years, so I think that's where he'll go back. But I think in qualifying trim, Russell's going to be right up there with the very best this season, and I didn't put him as champion, so I wanted to show a bit of love for George.
Nice. I like how you're spreading it around a little bit. Quickly for you, Sean, I think you sort of kicked yourself last year for not putting your money where your mouth was regarding Sainz, so you're backing him here.
Yeah, in my little fantasy land, Leclerc top of the championship, Ferrari dominating, Sainz playing catch up. Maybe Charles takes fewer risks in sprint than Carlos needs to, and doesn't settles for a second place and a couple of points. It's just my thinking there. Can afford to take more risks. That's what I'll go with.
I mean, if Ferrari suck next year, this is a write-off for you this year.
I won't even bother coming back for the results.
All right, let's ask the question. How many of the sprints are going to have the same winner as the Grand Prix of that weekend? I let you choose up to 8 because maybe they'll do 8 sprints. I think 6 is the consensus, but if they do any, I don't know. Whole range of answers here. Dan thinks all 6 of them are going to have different winners, while Jonty thinks none of them will. Let's start with Jonty, because Dan just spoke. So you just think sprint races are going to set up the Grand Prix and then nothing's going to change?
What do you mean nothing will change? My answer means it will be completely changed.
No, yours is the other way around. Yes, sorry. Jonty, you think everything's going to be crazy?
No, I just suspect that they're going to place the sprints at the more close and frequently chaotic tracks, and I think they'll change the format so that they will go for it in the sprints a bit more. They'll give everyone something more to aim at, which will lead to even more chaos.
Optimistic thinking that they'll nail that. And so Dan, you're the one who thinks that the Grand Prix will be kind of set by the sprint.
Yeah, and I think what Jonty has just said is kind of how I feel, but the inverse. So I agree with Jonty that the sprints this year really didn't encourage teams or drivers to push. They were very much where you were after turn 1. Let's just get the car home and not start from the back of the grid tomorrow. And I'm not convinced they will make the changes. I'm not convinced now that they'll actually go ahead, but if they do, I think they will stick with the format they've got now, disappointingly. And yeah, can you tell I'm not a fan of sprint races?
You're really not a fan of sprint races. Nonetheless, I'm going to keep asking you questions about it. I'm going to ask you, we're assuming there are 6 sprint races, just tell me where they're going to be. Everyone you get right, you get 5 points. Simple as. Dan, you've gone Brazil, Imola, Britain, Italy, the US, and Australia. Sean, you've gone Brazil, Imola, Canada, Austria, Netherlands, and Bahrain. Hazel, Brazil, Miami, Britain, Monaco, Hungary, and Saudi Arabia. I've got Brazil, Miami, Canada, Austria, US, and the Netherlands. Jonty, you've gone Miami, Imola, Monaco, Hungary, Russia, and Abu Dhabi. And the audience, Brazil, Miami, Canada, Britain, Austria, and Italy. I ordered them by popularity. I think Brazil's an easy pick. It was the only one last year that actually seemed to be fun to watch. I thought Miami felt like a good place to add some extra spectacle to that showcase event they're really, really trying to sell. So let's instead talk about some of the outliers. Hazel, I think Jeddah's an interesting pick. Tell me about that.
So I think my logic here was a sort of mix of like outright cynicism. So like, yeah, it'll be at Miami because they want it as a feature for showcase events, and that's meant to be a showcase event. Qualifying is the only good bit of Monaco, so obviously they'll f*** that up. And then Jeddah. So I think my logic here was actually sort of like maybe this would actually be a good choice. So because it's such a high speed kind of like dangerous track at qualifying pace, that they'd introduce a weakened Friday qualifying format and then use the sprint qualifying as a kind of like just a safer way of using that track.
Okay, yeah, that's it. That's very specific and interesting. Sean, I'm going to ask you about the idea of starting off the season with a sprint in Bahrain.
I mean, Bahrain's a track where we tend to see quite a bit of, I know mainly DRS, but quite a bit of overtaking and quite a bit of action. I think having the new rules throws some uncertainty in there, so chucking a sprint in as well it just feels like the perfect way to kick off the season. Complete chaos, potentially rusty drivers, a track you can have some action on. I think that's going to be brilliant. So I think it's, I'd go as far as to say that's a no-brainer for me, Bahrain.
It'll make a lot of people really unhappy as well, so...
Sochi, that's Jonty's unique pick.
Not the only one.
You've picked a couple of you've picked a few traditionally not very passy races.
Imola wasn't that great with the previous cars, so spice it up a bit. Monaco, yeah. Hungary, they're the same thing. One has walls. Got to spice them up somehow. The same thing for Russia. You've got to make it get something out of it. As for Abu Dhabi, that's a bit of my cynical mind thinking. Well, you got the bosses thinking. The old adage of no such thing as bad publicity. Just look at the media attention worldwide after last year, after that race, for weeks and weeks. It's still going on now. So they're probably thinking,
God,
right,
can you imagine how painful it would be if there was something that happened in sprint qualifying and then
exactly.
oh no,
They're all-
I don't want to live in this universe. Why have you summoned it?
Yeah, they're all saying to themselves, right, that was bad last year. We can't have that happen again. But what if we had a sprint race there and the grid for the race got screwed up in a completely fair manner because it's actually happening on track? That's genius. Let's go with that.
Your cynicism is delicious.
Ask yourself, would you put it past them?
I'm so unhappy right now.
Well, let's move on to happier things. Yuki Tsunoda. This went tits up last year because everyone picked races where he didn't get any points. But I'm determined to make this work. So get Yuki's points. All you had to do was give me 5 races and you'd get all of Yuki Tsunoda's points, whatever he scores in those venues. Let's start with Dan, as usual, who's gone with France, Abu Dhabi, the US, Britain and Miami. Dan, just give me one reason for one of your picks. And
The thought process here is I've just got a real gut feeling Yuki is going to boss Miami. I think he might win that one. So that's a good one to pick.
Brilliant. Genius. You did not make that up just now, I'm sure. Sean. Bahrain, France, Baku, Belgium and Brazil. A lot of Bs. You want to explain one of your Bs?
It's my favourite letter.
He did all right in Brazil, didn't he, last year?
Yeah, I think I'm just having a look now. Actually,
And Bahrain.
yeah, it was. I think I've definitely put Bahrain on because that was where he made that move on. I think it was Alonso, where he made several moves in that race that made everyone go hello. And I think as well his performance in Abu Dhabi, if he can carry that momentum into 2022, I think he'll have a good start. So yeah,
Nicely picked. Hazel, you got very similar to Sean, except you've picked Russia and Saudi Arabia. Any particular reason for seeing Yuki strong in some of these?
Bahrain, he was good last season on his debut. They're testing there again, and it seems like where he's had a chance to know the track a little bit, he was more confident at the start of last season. France, honestly, I don't know what the logic was there. Well, and then the final three, I've decided that getting his eye in for his Formula E career, he's going to be really good at street races. So there you go.
It's good thinking. Always thinking ahead. I'm actually quite similar to you, except I picked Zandvoort instead of Jeddah. Kind of some of these are very much like Russia and the Netherlands. If he gets a good qualifying, he's not going to be passed there. So, John T, you've gone US, Austria, Italy, Monaco and Imola. Yeah, John T, give us some cases here.
I've gone with...
I don't know why I made those noises.
I went with a high probability of the race happening and a high probability of the race having chaos to avoid the issues of the science question 2 years ago and the Yuki question last year where we all picked races that didn't happen.
That is true. That was part of the downfall last year. No, solid picks. And the audience, kind of a selection of a lot of ones we've picked with Japan, which we went very heavy on last year, being the home race, but then it got cancelled. So hopefully he will get a home race this year and the crowds egg him on to some points. I think he's got to have a better year this year, hasn't he? I think he's got to sort him. He was kind of all over the place for the middle of the season. I think he could probably be more consistent.
I think Yuki had an almost impossible job last season. When you think about the rookies last year had so little practice time, there was massively reduced pre-season testing compared to any season prior. Anything they'd done to prepare themselves to integrate with their teams, to prepare themselves for F1 had to be done in lockdown. And so it was really awkward for them to get access to facilities, was awkward for them to do stuff. Yuki was largely unable to access the AlphaTauri factory until the 2020 season ended because of the restrictions on how people could move around, and then had to basically get his head into doing F1, especially because flipping Red Bull wouldn't let him move to Faenza until halfway through the season, because they were making him live in Milton Keynes. So, like, even once he was actually driving for them, he couldn't get access. And he had the most impossibly embedded, really experienced teammate to go up against. So, of course, he was going to look like an idiot. Whereas if you're in a Haas, you can crash it every week. And everyone's like, yeah, it was a rubbish car, though, isn't it? Yeah. So, yeah, I think his sort of loss of confidence mid-season, where like things started to fall apart, was totally understandable, and that it was difficult to pick back up. Because I mean, if you look at like Ricciardo losing confidence, and then how long it took him to pick back up his form, it's flipping incredible to actually manage to put yourself back together in your rookie year and do that. I like Yuki; he's good egg.
Yeah, I'm glad we're seeing some defence of Yuki, and actually, hopefully, he'll be on firm footing this year. And I'm actually glad they gave him a second chance, because Red Bull juniors don't often get a lot of leniency. Let's move things along to the penultimate section, the Unreliables. Just a few questions about when things go wrong, really. First question: which driver will complete the fewest racing laps? Dan's gone with Mazepin. Sean, Albon, Hazel, also Alex Albon. I've gone with Vettel. Jonty and the audience have also gone Nikita Mazepin. I think this is quite a tricky one. There's lots of factors to consider here. I kind of went with Vettel just because I think he's a bit cursed. I've got no real smart reason for this, other than I think the racing gods just keep trying to smite him. So maybe for some more intellectual answers, Sean, what kind of season do you see Alex Albon having?
I mean, thank you. Came to me for an intellectual answer. I don't know how you're feeling. You feeling all right? I don't really. I think part of it is that he's had a season away. I don't think that's going to make much of a difference this year with the rules change, but I think it's a factor. I think I've done this really to hedge my bets a little bit, because I've gone quite hard on Haas being the worst and having their problems, but I do have reservations about Williams. As Dan said, they didn't do the tyre test, thinking Abu Dhabi, things like that might hurt them early on, so we might see some early retirements. I don't know. I just kind of hedge my bets a little bit with that, just to not keep picking Mazepin.
Well, Dan, let's give you a change of pace here. You've been talking up Haas for a long time, but Nikita Mazepin, liability? Because clearly you don't think that Haas is going to fall apart under him.
I think he will be better this season. I think he will be fighting for points on one or two occasions. But I think the big question mark for me and Mazepin is that we didn't really get to see him fighting anyone last year. We saw him fight Schumacher on the opening lap, and that was pretty much it for the 22 races we had. Thinking back to F2, he was very feisty in wheel-to-wheel combat, and I think put him in that midfield with a couple of other hot-headed guys in there, I think things could get tasty, and things may not end well for Mazepin. And I think, that car last season wasn't that reliable. It's something that Haas has never really been particularly great at on a mechanical side of things and in the pit stops. So I'm just, it's the popular choice, and I'm just not convinced the Maz is going to be able to pull out the goods this year.
The Maz. All right, let's talk power units. Which team's going to get through the most power unit components? Last year it was Alpine, followed by Red Bull and then AlphaTauri. But what about this year? Dan reckons Aston Martin will burn through all their components. Sean and Hazel think Alpine will completely destroy their Renault supply. I hope you're liking this flavour text. I've gone with AlphaTauri on the basis that Red Bull are in their first year of managing power units themselves and might just offload some experiments onto the junior team, maybe. Jonty's gone with Mercedes, and so has the audience, quite substantially, actually. And you know what? Last year it did feel like Mercedes were burning through their power units, but actually it was mostly just the combustion engines, and they were pretty okay on the other ones. Whereas Alpine burned through 9 exhausts.
See, this was my thinking, and especially because the exhaust allocation is actually going down. Because, obviously no one can develop their power unit, so they're, not to burst your bubble, Stuart, but there isn't going to be any experimental parts.
That we know of.
That's true, yes. My feeling is that I don't know if Alpine have really sorted out their exhaust problem. or
Well, if there's
Renault specifically have sorted out their exhaust problem, because the Renault power unit is why that rule exists, because McLaren managed to get more performance out of it by just like lobbing their exhaust system out 3 times a weekend. So that was why they were limited to 8. The fact they went over 8 and now it's gone down to 5, I think. Like, not convinced by that.
We'll see. I mean, if there's one thing you love, Hazel, it's a drivetrain.
Mm.
And if there's one thing you own, it's a Renault. So you'd probably know.
That's true.
All right, let's have a look. Let's talk DNFs, but in terms of races. I just want you to pick 3 races, and you'll get 5 points for every car that DNFs at that race. Not sprints, just Grand Prix. Could be accidents, could be unreliability, could be bad weather. Dan, you've gone Canada, Miami, and the US. Clearly some kind of statement about North America.
I wish I had something intellectual to say on that. Absolutely not, though. Canada, we've not been there a while.
Mm-hmm.
Miami's a brand new track. I think those two are going to be fun regardless. And I've got a soft spot for COTA. I think we could have a fun race there this year. If cars are all competitive, it's going to be one I think you can overtake in quite a few places. And I think people will get very creative in Sector 1, is an early prediction. Yeah, I think Canada in particular, I'm convinced that could be a really fun race this season.
Wall of Champions, innit?
Quite a lot of attrition in Canada. Yeah, got it. Sean, 3 completely different races. Saudi, Baku, and Singapore. I spot a theme.
Yeah, street tracks. If we're going to see chaos, it's going to be street tracks. And Baku, somebody's going to crash there or have a tyre blowout. You never know. Jeddah, I mean, well, Christ. And Singapore, a bit like Dan said about Canada, we've not been there for a little while now. So if we do get a race in Singapore, drivers getting to know the track a little bit. I think as well, maybe it's mad, but if these cars are easier to follow and drivers are more nose to tail at these street tracks, they might be more inclined to have a go. And that might just cause a few more incidents. So I thought street tracks was a fairly safe-ish bet.
And on that note, Hazel's gone Imola, Britain, Mexico.
So my logic here was Imola, just generally there does always seem to be quite a lot of attrition. Basically because they crash into each other around there, don't they? Silverstone famously, there's always safety cars, apart from like the anomalous years where there isn't one and everyone goes like, oh, it's been 96 years since there wasn't one of those. Then Mexico actually is a reliability thing, and also because maybe all of the new fancy airflow stuff that they've got will mean that like cooling and stuff is even more complicated in the thin air and stuff.
Well argued. Me, personally, I've got exactly the same as Sean. I thought high speed, street tracks, always a lot more risk there. Got nothing more to add that Sean didn't say. John T has gone Monaco, Imola, and Italy.
Clearly, I'm predicting a streak of terrible storms and weather in the Mediterranean. Or Etna goes up and causes chaos.
Yeah, if there is rain, these 3 tracks are pretty treacherous.
Oh, I was going to say, saying that, Australia and Brazil could end up much wetter and colder this year thanks to the volcano going off.
Well, none of us predicted a volcano.
We should have. That's our fault. Yeah.
Let's go on to the final section, true or false. So basically, a bunch of quick questions. You just have to tell me if they're going to end up true or false. First statement, all teams score points. Hasn't happened in the last couple of years. But everyone except Dan thinks it's going to happen this year. You a little surprised by that, Dan?
A little. But then I suppose we were close this year if Haas managed to sneak a car in, and they were terrible. So this is just my Williams hate continuing, I'm afraid.
Let's, next question. Russell outscores Perez, which ended up being one of the very few unanimous answers. John T, is it really that obvious?
Not. I didn't expect everyone to go the same way, to be honest. But, faster driver, slightly less car. It's so tight between both their driving ability and the cars. I just basically flipped a coin.
My logic was Russell, because Mercedes overall are a little bit fairer about the way they treat their drivers normally, Russell was less likely to get told to get out of the way for Hamilton than Perez is to end up sort of As he was repeatedly last season, like his strategy sacrificed for Verstappen's.
I think that's a good fair point. I think without that on the whole, there's a lot of question marks between where those two teams are going to sort of shake out after going through last year and exactly how good Russell is going to be. Let's have a look at the next one. The winning constructor takes 10 or fewer wins. Little range of answers here. 4 falses and 2 trues. The audience was very close on this one. How do you see this shaking out, Hazel?
I mean, with such a long season, it would mean that there would have to be like a decent amount of parity between teams for this not to be the case. But I also think unless there is a totally dominant run, then I think a lot of constructors' championships are won by like consistently bringing home second and third and like picking up those points where you need to, not necessarily having the most outright wins, apart from like the years where Hamilton won it on his own. I think wins are less important for the constructors, so that was my logic.
It's an interesting one. The constructor standings after round 12, which is sort of halfway-ish, will be the same as they are in the final standings order. But we are in consensus again. We all think this is not going to be true. Last year there was a lot of battling going on several fronts, right to the very end. Sean, with that going on and the development time budgets being sort of reallocated halfway through this season, do you think this will play into the continuing flux between teams?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'll be honest, I've not really sort of taken into account the fact that the development thing switches mid-season. I've kind of forgotten about that, so that could help mix things up a little bit in the second half of the year. It just feels unlikely to me. I kind of wish I'd looked back to see what happened in 21, whether or not it was the same sort of as round 12.
It wasn't, but so like I think there's a decent chance that the top would actually be like effectively decided, or it might well shake out the same way it was like halfway through. But the midfield, on the other hand, and the low end, like it only takes something like Spa to radically change the low end of the field.
Yeah, kind of. If it's really close, like we saw last year, wherever we are, if it's really close in that midfield, one really good result or one really bad result could swing it either way, couldn't it, for some teams? So,
again, I'm hoping we're all right on this one because I do like that midfield battle last year was really great. Here's a spicy little question I don't know the answer to. The Formula 2 driver champion gets a 2023 F1 seat. A little bit of a cursed seat, that. But let's see what you thought. Mostly falses. The audience went true, but only just. 51% thought whoever it is will get a seat. Let's start with Dan. A word on the behalf of optimism here.
I mean, I'm all in on Théo Pourchaire getting that Alfa Romeo seat in 2023. Also, you know, while I'm here and I can see everyone else has gone false and I'm starting to panic, the Formula 2 champion, you know, that's currently Oscar Piastri, so does he count as well?
No.
Okay, I think we're changing the rules there midway through the game, but that's fine. I'm still going in with Théo and thinks he's still got that Alpha seat for next year. That's
exactly why I said false. As awesome as Pourchaire is, Piastri's better, and he'll get it.
Plus, you're relying on Porsche actually winning the title. He might get the seat in P2.
Well, I'm also relying on, you know, not changing the rules halfway through the game, but, you know, that's how we're playing it this year.
Are you accusing Stuart of being sassy Massey in disguise?
It's called a prediction champion?
I'm just saying we're in the last 10 laps of this prediction thing and the rules are starting to change, so no surprise there.
It doesn't say a Formula 2 driver champion.
The Formula 2 champion,
and don't forget, Dan,
Oscar Piastri.
A doesn't mean the.
God. Any driver?
We did so well up to this point.
No, Teo's going to be great. I'm fine with that.
I just can't see Dennis Hauger managing to get a seat.
I mean, my only reason for saying false is that we seem to have a perpetual problem of having no seats in Formula 1 because there's a bunch of old people sitting in them.
They need the seats. Their knees are bad.
And Lando's not that old, to be fair, Stuart. That's harsh.
He's been there long enough. Has he got a win yet? No. Final few questions are based on audience opinion. Kind of like last year, I'm going to ask the audience opinion-based questions after they've seen the season, and you're going to tell me if they answer true or false. Starting with, the new Miami track was a great addition to the calendar. Your guesses are 3 trues, 3 falses. I'll go to Sean. F1 have been pushing this for a long time. I actually didn't think it would ever happen. But here we are. And you think it won't be embraced positively?
I mean, I'm optimistic. I think it could be pretty good. But I've noticed a pattern in recent years that when we get a new track, some fans on social media instantly take a dislike and they keep that stance regardless of what the race was like. And given that I'm guessing this poll is going to go somewhere near social media, I've kind of played the odds a little bit there, if that makes sense. I think if you were to ask people in the street, they probably love it. But on Twitter, they probably hate it.
Okay, well, the audience is on your side pre-race, pre-season. Yeah, and Hazel, you are optimistic. Oh, you think the fans will love it either way?
I mean, I think it's going to be a bit of a car park. And probably a total shambles, but it'll probably be one of those ones where it's like, there's always a couple of like, I don't like shambolic races, but they do always like score really, really, really highly in terms of like, I guess because they're the ones where loads of stuff happens and people remember them. But it's going to be, it's going to be hot, it's going to be sweaty. Stuff will happen. Probably it'll turn out that they made the track surface out of alligators or something,
On a similar note, let's talk about Melbourne. They're changing up the track, making the slow corners into fast corners. So if I ask at the end, the track changes to Melbourne made the track better, will people say true or false? And you guys think mostly true, much more positive than the Miami thing. John T, you didn't say anything last time. You think this is going to be a good one? Or you think they're at least going to be perceived as a good one?
Yeah, they're going to be perceived as a good one, because if the regs turn out that the cars can follow closer and we've got faster sweeping corners, they will stay closer for longer, but people will casually forget that it's the cars that's done it, not the track.
Okay, okay. I'm following with that. I'm actually quite excited about it, but I was quite excited about Abu Dhabi, and I'm not entirely convinced. Well, it was better. Final question. I think the thing we're all asking ourselves, the new for 2020, I struggled with this last year, 2022 rules improve the racing. If I ask that after the season, what's everyone going to think? 4 trues, 2 falses among you. I think similar to what we've been talking about, I found this quite hard to judge because I think they might. I think they will improve the racing, actually, on paper, and I'm actually quite excited about it. But I know the fans are quite fickle, and sometimes they come in with a bit of an attitude. So, and there's a lot of hype for these cars. They've been banging on about them for about 3 years, so they've got to live up to a lot. So, I mean, John, I'll go with you again, John. So you're in the false camp. So, do you think this is a fan thing or an actual?
A fan thing, and an actual thing. It's one of the oldest sayings in racing. Getting close is one thing, passing is another, and whilst the reg changes will let them get much closer, I don't think it will make that much difference to the actual overtaking. And of course, with a new regs, someone's going to get it very right, someone's going to get it very wrong, and there will be a spread throughout that. The way the teams have got closer and closer to each other the last few years, that will all be out the window. Everyone's starting from scratch. So there will be sort of obvious and defined differences between the teams, and that will be obvious.
See, that's kind of where I'm at, Jonty, with it, but also I think, I don't know how you feel on it, but coming off 2021, one of the best seasons I think we could all agree we've ever seen. It was incredible start to finish for one reason and another, but you're coming into 2022, you said it, Stuart, all the hype's there, a lot of people expecting it to be super close between so many teams. If we get one team that dominates, it's going to feel for a lot of people like a little bit of a letdown versus what we had in 2021, and they might say, well, what we had before was better because look at what we had last year versus this year. So I think that could be how it's perceived.
Yeah, it's like we'll go into Bahrain with all that hype, and then you've got the spread of what the teams have managed to achieve, and you end up with the winners 15 seconds or more ahead of anyone else, and then another 5 or 10 seconds to the second team, and another 5 or 10 seconds, and maybe a couple scrapping, and then another 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm. We'll go finish us off, Dan. Give us something positive. You've gone with true.
I think it's going to be great.
Yay!
The racing, surely it's going to be better. If they put this much time in the preparation, even if we have a Ferrari domination, even if my prediction of no Red Bull podiums comes to fruition, the racing itself, I feel, has to be better. And I just hope people watch the midfield this year. I hope the TV cameras focus on it more and people realise it will be better.
Perfect. I love it. Let's call it on that. That's it. We did it. We got through. I did way too many questions this year. But all we have to do now is watch the season unfold and realise how little we actually know about anything, which is always the joy of the year. Any of you feeling like you could win this?
No.
No.
Not really.
I think we can just all agree that we definitely don't want Sean to win it, because if he does, it'll have been crap.
I think what's interesting is the audience, by like law of averages, has actually gone like quite conservative compared to us in a lot of cases. So it would be a more predictable season if they won it than if it was any of us. And, you know, last year was unpredictable, so...
I also think they've gone much harder on Haas than I think will turn out to be the case. And I think that gives us a chance to beat them, at least one of us. I don't know if I'm as far along as Dan is and the old Haas Kool-Aid, but I do think they'll be significantly better next year. I'm excited because we're finally at this kind of brand new rules change that we've been waiting for a very long time. And at the very least, we get to actually see how it all shakes out. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking part. You can find the brilliant Dan at Racing Reviews. Sean, thanks so much for coming. And if you want more of Sean, you check out the F1 Word. Hazel, thanks especially. I know you're very late and in a very different time zone, and clearly still awake somehow. Now you're a little bit everywhere. So where can the good people find you if they want to like sample your wares?
So I write for a bunch of places, but racefans.net and The Drive are kind of like my two regular or most regular gigs. So yeah, look out for stuff about all kinds of things: ocean rocks, electric vehicles, Michael Massey, yeah, the full range.
John T, of course, we can find you on social media and writing articles. I'll put your link tree in the bottom there. You write good things about safety in motorsport.
You'll find me here soon enough, because I've got to go through all these again in a few days, because I have a plan.
Oh yes, true.
A secret plan.
You do have a plan. Look out for that. And of course, thanks at last to the audience. If you did take time to fill out the survey in the very small window I gave you. We are obviously all going to beat you, but with thanks anyway for taking part. And yeah, thank you everyone. I will see you, well, I'll see you before the end of the season, but I'll definitely see you at the end of the season to go through these and we can all laugh at each other. Yeah, thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye. I'm not singing.
Bye.
No chance. I'm not doing it.
You said that last time, you still did.
This video is brought to you by CuriosityStream and Nebula, two streaming platforms with oodles of content for the curious mind. And you know what? Someone said to me they hadn't fully appreciated just how good the cost of the deal was. So I'm going to tell you right now, it's $14.79 for the whole year for both platforms together. So listen on for more details. So you may know CuriosityStream is the big platform for documentaries and non-fiction, entertainingly educational films and programming. And they're big fans of Nebula, which is made for and cared for by independent creators like me. So that's why they've teamed up with Nebula to bring you this cool deal. Nebula's full of brilliant people who create fascinating content around everything from science and engineering to writing and animation. So you can be watching 12 Tone get into a musical breakdown of Bohemian Rhapsody 1 minute, find out why our changing climate doesn't rate the US as a climate leader, before dipping into Soph's exclusive video on an orgasmic cult. Because yes, as well as Nebula giving you all these videos ad-free, there's also exclusive videos, series, and extended cuts that are only found on Nebula. $14.79 for the year, guys, just reminding you of that. And then don't forget, because Nebula and CuriosityStream are offering you this bundle, you can then slide over to CuriosityStream and watch Dr. Hannah Fry's mathematical documentary series, Magic Number. So yes, to confirm, if you sign up to CuriosityStream, you will get full access to Nebula as well for as long as you're signed up to CuriosityStream. And that's it. Very simple. And if you sign up via the link in my description, curiositystream.com/chainbear, you'll get that 26% discount, which gives you the whole lot for, yes, $14.79 for the whole year. And that continues to help support creators like me. So go on, enjoy it.